The V12 has always been Lamborghini's signature dish, so when they started getting to the end of production for the Aventador, they wanted to go out with a bang and create the highest performing, wildest looking one they could. I'm Nima from MVL Leasing, and this is a 2019 Lamborghini Aventador SVJ. So the name Aventador comes from a Spanish fighting bull. Everybody knows that. Not a lot of people know what SVJ stands for. So SVJ stands for Super Veloce Jota or Jota. That name, J-O-T-A, was usually designated for Lamborghini's highest performing models. They started this with the Lamborghini Miura, which was the car that made Lamborghini famous, and they brought that name back for the Diablo. Since those two cars, they haven't used that name until now with this one. The Aventador SVJ is built on three principles, or they kind of emphasize these principles when it comes to how they tweak this car. Downforce, lightness, and aerodynamics. It's a big deal, makes the car look different. Form follows function when it comes to these things. So on the front bumper, you're gonna see that this symbol here that says ALA. That stands for Aerodynamica Lamborghini Attiva, which is Lamborghini Active Aerodynamics. All cars have really nice front splitters and front lips and spoilers and stuff like that, but the ones on the SVJ actually have functioning parts that alter how the car manages the air. Right away, you'll notice in the front lip right here, there's these two little rectangular slots. Now these are actually active. So these open and close to alter the downforce on the car depending on what you want to do. When these vents here are closed, they provide more downforce. So these flaps open up, so air rushes here and it shoots it beneath the car. When the vents here are open, they provide less downforce. When they're closed, they provide more downforce. And they're actually built, or they function based on electric actuators. Most stuff like this is hydraulic, but that means more weight and more sophistication. So when you have electric actuators for these, it's really all about lightness. One cool thing is, depending on what the temperature is, if it's really cold, these will cease to function to prevent them from being damaged from the cold weather. The point is, when you are trying to go for a sprint, let's say you're trying to do a quarter mile, these will probably stay open in order to create less downforce. This will make it easier for the car to do that sprint. But when you start getting to higher speeds where downforce is more important, then these vents will close. Now, this isn't the only portion of the car that has this feature, but in the front end is extremely important. SVJs have a specific bumper. So you would only see this on an SVJ. You have extra vents here. So the air comes in over this carbon fiber piece of your front bumper and it goes up here and it shoots out the top. And it follows these channels all over the car and directs air to that rear spoiler, which we're gonna get to. That's a really cool part. The name of this color is called Verde Alchio. Verde means green. Alchio is an Italian name that's synonymous with strength and power. Think the Hulk, because the car is quite big and very powerful. And it's a factory matte paint, and this particular car is covered in a satin PPF, the entire car. It doesn't take away from the color underneath. Depending on what angle you're looking at the color tends to change. It's actually a really nice feature. Aventadors are full of sharp lines and stuff, so depending on where you're standing, it really shows the different lines of the car without hiding them like the color black or something like that. Another important element about the front end of this car and the aerodynamics down here are these inlets that are on each side of the front bumper, just behind this carbon fiber piece right here. These direct air to those carbon ceramic brakes to help cool them. They generate a lot of heat and you're probably going to be romping on them a lot. The car is extremely light, but generally still a heavy car, and you need the most efficient braking you can get, and that is absolutely necessary. Let's just make our way around to the side here. You have nice touches with the SVJ, like, carbon fiber accessories that kind of stand out. But the really nice part that helps set these cars apart are the wheels. It's a double staggered setup, so it's a 255 20-inch tire in the front. This is a forged aluminum wheel. They're center locking with a nice carbon fiber Lamborghini center cap. Carbon ceramic brakes, of course. Whoever had spec'd this car had gotten the red brake calipers painted. So you see a lot of the aerodynamics or ground effects that carry on from the front all the way down the sides of the car to the back. So you have these winglets on the side that direct air up and around the wheels and help keep the front end down. And this is kind of carried on throughout the side here. Regular Aventadors don't have these carbon fiber side skirt extensions with these little winglets that help direct the air. Once we go further down the side here, you have nice carbon fiber mirrors. So this is the mirror casing and the mirror post, all pure carbon fiber. Those side skirt extensions that I was describing to you. You have this nice little tiny triangular window that comes in all Aventadors. And for the special edition ones like this one, you have a nice carbon fiber badge that's bolted to the inner door here, where it tells you you're driving a car that they only made 900 of. So for the coupe version, they only made 900 of these cars for the world. One common thing to a lot of the design for a lot of Lamborghini's sports cars like this is the silhouette. So you could almost draw a straight line from the tip of the nose right to the top of the windscreen. This is common to, say, Huracan, Aventador, Murcielago, Gallardo. It's kind of a design element that they're known for. Especially with the Aventador, when you get a Roadster, the silhouette doesn't change. The car retains that same shape. It's very low slung and it looks like it's breaking the speed limit even when it's standing still. Once we come down here, the doors themselves are pretty much taken from a regular Aventador, but the one thing that really helps this SVJ stand out, if the thing had no badges and no spoiler, I would know it's an SVJ by this giant air intake or heat exchanger actually. So on the SVJs, you can see that these actually jut out a lot more than on a standard Aventador. You really wouldn't notice unless you had the cars next to each other, but when you have this stick out a bit more, you're able to scoop more air. And you're gonna need to do that because you have a huge heat exchanger there, and then it all carries on towards the back. There's vents and inlets everywhere. So you have your intakes on the side here, they're fixed and open, finished in carbon fiber. That's a nice touch. You can usually get these cars with a lot of stickers or decals on the side. This one just has one, and it's the only one that counts, the SVJ one. Now this is actually painted on the car, it's actually not a sticker. Now we come back down here to the rear wheel, carries on the theme from the front. Wheels specially designed by Pirelli for Lamborghini. You can tell by the Lamborghini L on the tire. Carbon ceramic brakes, like I said, 21-inch wheel in the back, 20 in the front, 355 tire in the back, 255 tire in the front. I don't know a car right now that has a wider rear tire, but for these big Lambos, it's kind of part and parcel to their big V12 cars. Now the coolest thing about the rear wheel is the rear wheel steering. So the Aventador is actually a relatively big car with a pretty long wheelbase. So when you integrate rear wheel steering, this greatly improves your handling. And for something like this that looks like it's born and built on a track, you need any advantage you can get in order to carve those corners. So I would handle a standard Aventador all day long just because of this one feature. It's actually really neat. A lot going on back here. Seems really busy, but everything has a purpose. So we're gonna start with the spoiler because this looks like it demands the most attention. So it's a pretty unique shape. It's the second part of Lamborghini's ALA system with the active aerodynamics. If you look on the engine cover here, there's a big air intake here. And inside this air intake is something that looks like a throttle body flap like this. So it goes like this when it's closed and it goes like this when it's open. When it opens, it actually directs air here through these little veins that actually go into the spoiler, and there's actually vents underneath here that lets the air expel out. This stalls the wing, okay? And this adjusts your downforce depending on what you want to do. And not only that, one side can stay open and one side can stay closed. So half the wing has what they call wing stall and the other half doesn't. So that way they put downforce on one side of the wing and allow a little bit, like free up some downforce on the other side, especially like if you're in a corner. So if you're taking a right corner, it'll push this part of the spoiler down and vice versa. If you come a little bit lower, you have those iconic Aventador taillights. I love them. You have these two cannons that are facing you. So this is the new revised titanium exhaust for the Aventador, mainly for lightness, and it sounds a lot better. You'll notice this grille that kind of surrounds these exhaust tips. You can even tell that this car has about 12,000 kilometers. You can tell that this has faced a lot of heat in its time, because you can tell just by how it's kind of worn because of that heat. Big, thick carbon fiber rear bumper and diffuser. So the diffuser is extremely important because this is what directs and expels the air that is underneath the car. Beneath your taillights, you have these giant exposed radiators. So these all serve different purposes. One would be for the transmission, one would be for engine oil and things like that, but they serve different purposes but are fully exposed for you to see. You have your discrete rear view camera, which is necessary when you're reversing this car because it's very hard to see out the back with this huge wing and this center pillar right in your way. Specific to SVJs is the engine cover. So this is all made of carbon fiber. Your normal Aventador engine cover has different pieces of glass. So they did this for lightness and did away with a lot of parts. You'll notice a lot of vents. This is all to expel heat and add downforce through the engine bay. Those vents come right here on the top of the rear end, but this whole piece is removable. They actually got rid of the hinges and they got rid of the pistons that would allow one to just open the hood and let it be open. So they have these locks here that are spring loaded that you press in order to dislodge the engine cover. And usually it takes two people or one person who has some practice to pull this off in order to service the engine. So you just press on the actual keyhole. This exposes a little handle that you kind of pull vertical. It's helpful if you have somebody helping you or to have another person to help you pull this off, because these engine covers are very expensive and they did away with the hinges, so you kind of need to carry it off. And please don't drop it, because if you do, it costs just over $53,000 to replace. Okay, so now that we got the engine cover off, now we can see what makes this Aventador most special. So we'll start by this cross member here. So when you have an engine in the back and you need to maintain rigidity, this is a key component. It's in the shape of an X and it meets right down here where your rear suspension meets, which is actually a really neat feature with these Aventadors. It's push rod, which is F1 stuff. So the springs and the shock absorbers are actually located horizontally. You do have adjustable suspension. You can see little threads here where you can actually lower the car. Not something you'd be able to do. It takes a bit of work. Only trust a professional with this sort of stuff. The shock absorbers say BWI Group. This is actually owned by KW. When the Aventador first came out, the suspension was made by Öhlins, but for some reason when they switched to the Aventador S starting in 2017, they went with KW for the suspension. The Aventadors, when it first came out, they're all 6.5 liter naturally aspirated V12s. The first one that came out was 700 horse, the LP700, and this one is the second from the top in terms of horsepower. So how did they increase horsepower and stuff like that? So the main things that they did is that they revised the cylinder head, revised engine management, titanium intake valves, revised intake system, things like that. It's all a drop in the bucket, but it all adds up to a lot of horsepower. This is your intake system. So when we were on the side of the car, I showed you those small inlets right behind the windows. Those actually feed your air box. And your air box is actually right down here, and it splits the air into 2 throttle bodies per cylinder bank. So this car has 4 throttle bodies. So the air comes in here, it goes through a filter system, and then it goes in here into your throttle bodies and into the engine. Those bigger vents that you saw right here, these actually feed the heat exchangers that are fully exposed at the back of the car. When you have a radiator, both sides of it need to be open. One side to have the air rush at it, and the other side it's got to be open for the air to escape, to cool whatever is circulating inside that radiator. Down here, you'll see this really nice piece. This is the dry sump lubrication. So the oil is distributed in the engine through a strong pump. Doesn't require an oil pan or anything like that, or doesn't rely on an oil pan. When the engine cover is off, this fully exposes that throttle body looking flap that I was describing to you that dispels air and makes this rear spoiler more effective. So you can fully see the flap, where it is. You can see the hinge, and you can see that it can move in unison, or they can move independently, depending on what side of the wing that you want to have your downforce on. Okay, so now let's hop in and open these iconic doors. So these are scissor doors. The door handle is cleverly disguised right underneath this body line. You put your finger underneath and you feel a little rubber strip. You press that, the window shuffles down, electric actuator opens the actual door mechanism, and the door goes up on its own using a piston that's built into the fender right there. So you are greeted by your illuminated Aventador door sill here in that popular Aventador font, and it also exposes the carbon fiber tub of the car. More of this is shown on the inside, so let's hop in and take a look. When you hop in an SVJ, there's a few differences over and above a regular Aventador. So the one is the patterning on the seats. The center of the seat is Alcantara, it's for grip. And this car was spec'd with green accents. So you have green cross stitching going across your dash with the Alcantara, on your steering wheel, your 12 o'clock strip right here. Your inner door sills are also, the color of the stitching is called Verde Fawns. And you also have some piping that goes along your transmission tunnel here, and a nice little leather piece in the roof that's separated from the rest of the Alcantara roof by this green piping here. The seats themselves have the SVJ embroidery on the side to remind you which model you're driving. The seats are carbon fiber, so the backing of the seat is carbon fiber, the seat bottom is carbon fiber. The seats are actually still electric, and that's probably the most practical thing that you're gonna find in this interior. Everything else is kind of adorned with leather and exposed gloss carbon fiber. So one of the main things that I was telling you that was emphasized with the SVJ was lightness. A couple of the ways that they reduced the weight is to remove all the sound deadening in the car. So this car is notably louder than your regular Aventador. There's no floor mats. All you have are these grip strips that are built into the floor. There's no carpeting or anything like that. All of the carbon fiber tub is all fully exposed. When the Aventador was actually introduced in 2011 as a 2012 car, it was actually the cheapest supercar that you can get with a full carbon fiber tub. So this is at a time when the Holy Trinity was introduced, like the Porsche 918, the LaFerrari and stuff like that. But for a regular production car to have this was a big deal at the time, and it's still a big deal today. A performance bargain, if you ask me. The driver has an aluminum dead pedal here that you can use in order to push yourself back into the seat in order for you to kind of remain stationary when you're taking corners, and this thing will pull like maybe 1.1 Gs. The center console of the car is relatively unchanged. Few key differences is your different driving modes. You have 4 of them: Strada, Sport, Corsa, and Ego. So Strada is for regular street driving, Sport is heightened performance, Corsa is for the track, and Ego allows you to program and alter the things that change when you go from one driving mode to the other. So one thing that the Aventador has is what they call magneto-rheological suspension. Adjustable dampening. So the stiffness of the suspension can be adjusted. The height is fixed, but the stiffness can be adjusted. The way the transmission shifts, the most important thing when you're trying to put down lap times and stuff like that, that can be adjusted. Based on other reviews you've seen on the Aventador, when you put the car into a more aggressive modes, the transmission shifting is a lot harsher. It's almost the equivalent of getting kicked in the back. It even shortens the lifespan of your clutch, depending on what driving mode you spend the most time in. When you go into Sport, your suspension stiffens and your shifting becomes a bit faster. When you put it in Corsa, maximum stiff, it shifts the hardest. This car has a 7-speed single clutch transmission, which a lot of people don't like, but I personally love it because this actually makes the car more of an occasion to drive. Like the shifting is a lot harder. I feel like I'm a bit more a part of the action. Like it still shifts extremely fast, but there is one limitation to it, and the reason why they had to use a single clutch transmission is because there is no double clutch transmission that you can make that can not only deal with the punishment that this engine puts out, but also transfer that power through an all-wheel drive system. So it was necessary, and it's kind of part of the car's charm. It still shifts really fast. A lot of people say that sometimes it acts a little bit dim-witted at low speeds and things like that, but I'm sorry, if I'm buying an Aventador, I only care about how it acts at high speeds. I'm not using this to go grab a coffee. I want to have, I want it to be poised and ready to pounce when I want to put the pedal down, and it does that very well. Okay, now let's bring this car to life. So I'll just flip this switch cover here, foot on the brake, press and hold start. So now that the car is fired up, the instrument cluster comes to life. It shows a picture of the car. It even has little animations that let you know what the ALA system is doing that I was describing. It's got a G meter, and you have your revs that all go across the top. One thing I forgot to mention is that one way that this car achieves 770 horsepower is they increase the rev limit of the car. So this car revs to about 8,500, whereas previous models only rev to about 8,250. I know it's 250, but it makes a difference when you're at the limit. So I'm just gonna blip the throttle in Strada mode, and then we're gonna have it in Sport, where the valves and the exhaust kind of open up and let a little bit more sound come out. A couple more important things that I just wanted to mention about the interior of this SVJ. The nicest part is your one-piece carbon fiber door cards. So you don't have any pockets or anything like that. It's all one piece of carbon fiber. This is all done for lightness. This particular car is spec'd with the Lamborghini Sensonum sound system. Waste of money in my opinion. When you have a car that's this small, it's kind of hard to get the acoustics right, but what do you need a radio for when you have a front row seat to this orchestra behind you? A lot of people complain about that. You shouldn't be listening to music, you should be listening to the engine. Which brings me to the radio and the interface here. They're not winning any awards here. And when I remember when they were re-releasing the Aventador, or refreshing it with the Aventador S, I had a friend who worked at Lamborghini who went to Lamborghini training. And I said, did they do anything to the radio? Do I have an auxiliary input? Did they do Bluetooth audio now? And he goes, no changes. So even right up until 2022, you don't even have Bluetooth audio with these things. Now there's ways to get around this if you have a good audio guy and stuff like that, but you could tell that the radio and the interface wasn't a priority whatsoever. In fact, it was taken out of an Audi A6 that wasn't even built in the same year that the Aventador was made. They took it from a previous car. You can see where the priorities are when it comes to Lamborghini, but hey, I'm not complaining. As long as I can make a call, that's all I would really want to use this system for. And even then, if I'm driving this car, I don't really want to be bothered. So I hope you enjoyed some of the details that help this SVJ stand apart from the rest of the Aventador lineup. I've left out a lot of details, but feel like I highlighted the ones that are most important. I'm Nemo with MVL Leasing. Don't forget to like and subscribe.